Good morning. This is Matt Sexton with the Florida Department of Transportation's CAD office. Thank you for joining us for Traffic Plans Data Poll Manager, part of our ongoing series of webinars on hot CAD topics. Randy Roberts will be your presenter today. The webinar will be recorded and posted on our website on the webinars page. There is a question and answer dialogue for you to enter any questions you might have during the webinar. Our support staff will do our best to answer these questions via the Q&A dialogue in real time. However, at the end of the presentation, Randy will take some time to answer questions as well. If your question does not get answered, fear not. We will be compiling the questions and answers into a Q&A document, which will be posted along with the recording of the webinar. If you experience any audio issues, the best way to resolve that is to log out of the webinar and log back in, remembering, of course, that you can access the audio by telephone as well as computer audio. So without any further ado, I'll turn things over to your presenter, Randy Roberts.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome. Hello, everybody. We are going to do Light Pole Manager today. I'm going to show you how it functions in ORD and Civil 3D also. And thank you for spending the next hour with me. So sit back and almost relax, and we'll get started on this. So this presentation is 100% PowerPoint. Okay, I'm just kidding. It's 100% live. So I'm going to start off in ORD, and this is the same material that is in the training manual, but the difference is you'll get some additional nuances with the tool and how it works and what to do and what not to do, and a little troubleshooting if you run into an issue. Okay, so what we're going to do first is place some light poles. So I'm going to use, within traffic design, there is place cell group, and I'm going to open the pay item database. I'm going to hit collapse all. Going to expand highway lighting, light poles conduit. And for this one, I'm going to select 321, which is the 40-foot mounting height, 10-foot arm length, and select OK. Now, you have to pay attention on some of these. You see how it went all the way to the bottom. You have to make sure that you're selecting it correctly. So make sure this will be 100% fixed in the next maintenance release, but it is irritating. It doesn't do it on every category. It's just on certain ones. So just make sure you pay attention to that. All right, so for all set, I'm going to use 65 feet. For increment, I'm going to space them at 275 feet apart, and I'm going to set the angle to perpendicular. So and make sure the alignment is set also. So I'm going to select draw pattern. You do have to select the alignment again, but you can see a preview of the light poles. So if you wanted to make some changes based on that preview of distance, change it to 250. It tightens up there, and you can change any other parameter here, and it'll give you a live feedback on the preview. So the reason that you would select perpendicular, and I believe this is the only cell that you would use, typically in training, you use relative, but if I use relative, it rotates just light poles only the wrong way. So make sure you have perpendicular set, and if your preview looks good and you want to commit it to your file, left click. And now if we look at the properties of the light pole, you can see we have our alignment, our pay item number, all your general information that will be required for you to do quantities. But now there is a large item type with all the data here that you will need to enter for your pole data table, the new version of it. So we wrote a tool that will allow you to rapidly fill in this information here. That'll make it to your table. Now at that point, you would insert into your design file. So I'm going to click on Light Pole Manager. If you see on the bottom, it went through and processed the light poles that it found. Now, if you don't have any light poles inserted or load centers inserted, it will not load. So make sure you have that in there. We have added a little message box that pops up. If you try to launch it without any loaded, it'll remind you don't have any inserted, and please do that. All right, so looking at the dialog here, you see you have dark shaded cells and light colored. The difference is the dark shaded is automated. It's what's coming, it's what it's pulling from that cell, individual cells. So you can't modify this, nor would you want to, but everything else is modifiable where you can add data, your data to it. So as for instance, if you want to number the light poles, select renumber. Let me do that again. So you noticed it didn't select anything. So the selection process is simple. You have to do the extreme far left column here. See how it highlights everything that I've put in the file. If you want to do individual, you can do control and left click if you want individual ones, or you can hold shift and arrow key and select that way. So you have 3 different ways to select. But initially here, I'm going to number the poles here. So left click, you can on the light poles on the top here and renumber light poles. Now this is alphanumeric. You can do a number prefix, a start number, and an increment. So if I select OK, I've got 8 light poles entered into my plan here. Now, I understand some of the light pole numbers are going to be, you may have to go back in, you may have to add additional poles, you may have to renumber them. You're going to have to, if you want to edit and add, you will need to do that. So that's a little bit more time concerning there, but you will have to do that. The good news is once the light pole is labeled, that label will update with the correct pole number and circuit number that you need. Now, one of the things that we are working on that will be available in an upcoming release is, we're calling it a light pole labeler. And what that will do is, currently we use a text favorite to label the poles, which I'm be doing here shortly, but the light pole labeler will take the text favorite and will allow you to label it a lot easier and faster. So you don't have to go through as many steps, and it'll be tied to the information that's in this chart here. But the label is going to consist of pole number, circuit number, and station. Not sure if you need the offset and side in the label. You can leave that in the comments or questions area if you need that in the label. There's some discussion on what's needed in it, so we're open to that. Okay, so with the pole number set, you have to hit process save light poles for that to stick. And let's do some information on the light pole properties themselves. Okay, so this is pretty simple. You have a lot of data that as a pull down that you can select from. This is what's in the standards that you have to go through, but I'm not going to do that yet. So I am going to set the circuit number. We'll call it A1. And if you want to change circuit number 5 through 6, let me change that. I'm going to select none. Circuit number B1. Now I've got 2 circuits. Another thing also, you can hold your mouse down, left click, and just drag it down if you want to select it that way. It's a lot easier. Also, lots of different ways to select. Okay, so we have the circuit number and we have the pole numbers. Let's add in other information. Then select my rows. All right. So I'm going to select, actually, I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to unselect circuit number since we already have that covered. So I'm going to go through and let me see what's in the manual here. All right, so I'm going to select spread footing, 10 foot for the arm length. Arm rise is 3 foot. Mounting height is 40. Number of luminaires. If you don't have the pull down here, you will have to enter that in. Luminaire type, conventional. Make model, LED Cobra head. Lumens 15,000. Distribution 2. CCT 3000. The tilt degree is 5. Luminaire wattage 250. Voltage is 480. And load centers A. I'm going to select it A. We didn't place any load centers, but it's the same process as the light poles would place cell group. Maintaining agency FDOT. All right, so before I select OK, so one issue we ran into yesterday was the OK and cancel was cut off from my dialog box. And if you do run across that, that is due to your display settings. It was set at, on my laptop, as an example here, it was set as default to 125%. But at that resolution, it did not show the entire dialog box. So you may have to set that back to 100%, which I've done on my laptop here. That has already been taken care of before the next release. We took care of it yesterday. We have a expandable box now that'll bring it down and include everything in case it is cut off. So this is for current. If you have the release that's out now, you'll need to be aware of your resolution. All right, so I'm gonna select OK, got all that data in, and you have to process save to get it to stick to all of them. So for now, I'm going to close Light Pole Manager. Now, if I go back, look at the properties, all this data is filled in. Imagine having to fill all this in individually. That's why we look out for you and write applications that expedite your workflow. Okay, so I'm going to do some labels now. Show you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and close Place Cell Group. So I'm going to go to Drawing Production Place Label. And for type, this is a text favorite. And we have a text favorite called LT Light Pole. And yep, so it's ready to go. So be careful where you select on this light pole to place the label. Notice I'm selecting on the insertion point. If you select anywhere other than the insertion point, the label will not give you the feedback that you're looking for. So in other words, it would be a convoluted label number, right? No, maybe that's fixed. Okay. Anyway, if you do find that the label's not cooperating, make sure you pay attention to where you're inserting it to the insertion point of the cell. All right, so one little nuance I found yesterday was that if I labeled these light poles before I went into Light Pole Manager, they wouldn't update. But now, after all the data has been entered in Light Pole Manager, comes in, labels fine, and these labels will update. So if you go in, which I'll demonstrate, you can make changes and these labels will now update. So let me do a few more. Notice that when you set your text favorite the first time, it remembers. So I can just select it. And this is where the light pole labeler will come in handy, so you won't have to do this individually, because it'll plop all the labels in and then you will just go in and drag them to where you want to place them in the file to get around the line work and whatnot that's in the way. Notice we've switched to circuit number B1 with these poles. Okay, so we have 8 light poles labeled. All right, so let's say you wanted to come in here. Let's change, let's use an example here. Change this circuit number to C1. So I'm gonna select none, toggle on, whoops, that's load center. Circuit number, C1, select OK, hit process save. Now, if I had it panned over, let me see if I can get to it without, okay. So you see it's still got the circuit number B1 on it. So if you bring the focus back to your file, left click, see it updates that for you there. So there's another nuance there. So make sure, don't panic if it doesn't update, just left click in your file, bring the focus back to it, and it will update the label. Okay. So from here, you know, you would use the signal application to throw your conduit, select your alignment, select your conduit type, comes up with the pay item number. And we do have the extra links working in-house now, where for your light poles, you have extra 8 feet coming in, out, going out also, and pull and splice boxes that can now be accounted for. That will allow you to add it to the properties without having to see it graphically. So it'll just be an internal thing and the takeoff manager will pick that up. Also, we have coming up in the next release, we're doing the number of runs, so you can label your conduit. Now the label is going to behave differently than what's going to be in the property, so the takeoff manager can work with it. But for the label part of it, you can enter in your number of runs and quantity factor that. That will be in the label that you'll be able to place directly from the signal tool. I know a lot of people have positive feedback on the labeling that the traffic applications have built in, and it's only going to expand from there to include more data that you can then label to your design file. All right, so I am going to just place some conduit here. One thing that is also on the hit list for the developer is like pavement marking tool, where you can draw a freeform arc. That's coming to the draw conduit tool here, because you can see right now I'm having to just do a lot of clicks to go around this curve. So that'll be remedied in the next release. Keeping him busy. All right, so I got some conduit there. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And for pull and splice boxes, you use the signal tool to do that. Pull and junction boxes, I believe. Select your alignment. If you notice, I scroll down, gives you a preview of what you're fixing to put in here. And ignore the large preview here. We have actually fixed that. I didn't want to take a chance updating my file today with that, but the new cell library it's a little bit bigger also, and the preview is more correct. So actually I could have moved it down here a little bit more. Let's get it closer here. So in the manual, I place these boxes next to each light pole, and I also include load centers, but it's the same workflow. Okay. So now I'm going to close that, and as a bonus to this webinar, you get to learn that for some of the categories that are not included in the signal tool, you have an option now to use custom cell and place cell group that will allow you to use you can attach a cell file to it. So if I wanted to just attach ITS again here. So I'm going to left click on file, hit attach, and I'm going to browse to the cell folder, and I'm going to select ITS. Gives you that it loads, and here are the options currently in the ITS cell file. Now we have gotten a new expanded cell file from a consultant, so we're going to see if we can implement that into perhaps have it as a separate ITS expanded cell file to use. Make your design easier. But how this works is select one, select OK, comes up, got your preview here. Now here's where it's interesting. You can copy and paste directly from basis of estimates, the correct pay item number, the description, and then from there you would select your unit of measure. And from that point on, it behaves just like any other cell place cell group. Select the offset that you want it, then use the parameters down here to place it. So this is in the release that you have currently. In case you didn't know, it's very handy to add in other items that currently are not covered in the signal application. We are working on creating an ITS application, but this allows you to work forward here until that's done to get your file correct. Okay, I'm going to close that. So next I am going to reopen Light Pole Manager, and I'm going to create a light report. So it's going to create an Excel file. I already have one created here. It's going to put it in your lighting folder. So it's going to replace, it's going to overwrite the one that you just, well, if you have one that's already in there, it's going to overwrite it. So if you want to keep it, you need to rename it to something else. So here it has all the data that was in the Light Pole Manager that you added in. Now this is not for quantities, this is just for your pole data table. So I'm going to go ahead and close the Excel file. I'm going ahead and close the Light Pole Manager. So now I'm going to go to create file. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a file, and then we're going to bring in your table to your sheet. So discipline is set to lighting, and your file group is lighting sheet files. There is a pole tabulation and details, and I'm going to select create open file. Comes up, I'm going to hit close, create file. And now we have a sheet border ready for our table. So going back to drawing production, there is a place table. You have some options here. This is the preferred method to LDM, by the way, but you could still use LDM. But I'm going to show this method. So from file, you want to table styles, leave that alone because we're going to use the Excel, how it's formatted. Text style, you need to change this to FDOT small. So if you left that as a default, when you brought the table in, you wouldn't see any text. So make sure if you do bring it in, you don't see text, go back to place table, set the text style back to FDOT small. And for file name, click on this ellipse and select light pole data, select OK. Give it a second. Actually, those look good. Select OK. Give it a second. Comes in. I'm just going to, well, put it just inside the border. As you can see, it's expanded a little bit outside of it. Easy to do. Just select the table itself and bring it in. So you can resize these tables because it's going to get a lot of data in here, especially if you want to see everything that was in the table. So, and depending on the size of how many light poles you have in your design file, you may have to use multiple sheets for that. But gives you an easy way to insert it into your file. And from there, you're done with how the light pole manager works from start to end. So now I'm going to switch over Civil 3D, do the same thing. An advantage of if you're doing traffic plans and ORD, you can do the same thing in Civil 3D. They're the same applications. In fact, the ORD traffic applications came from Civil 3D. So here I am going to, I'm going to place some additional light poles here. So place block group. One little tidbit here is if you've noticed when you use place cell group in ORD, it says it has a block reference in it. That goes back to what I said, it came from Civil 3D to ORD. So just ignore that. It's looking for cells, but some of the verbiage is still in there. Same thing here, I'm going to select light pole. 3, 2, 1. Here it does the same thing. 3, 2, 1. Preview. Civil 3D, you have an option to enable grouping, which is going to put it all in one. So when you select one, you select all. But if you have to move those around to different areas, it's easier to not have them grouped. Civil 3D, you can also ungroup them even after it's placed, but I'm going to select ungroup. I'm going to do offset of 50. For location, I'm going to select this alignment, and the alignment association is State Route 61. Make sure this is populated. For increment, 275, perpendicular, and I'm going to set the beginning buffer distance at 250. So I'm going to place this, just left click on the side, there they are. So the difference in Civil 3D is if I select the pole itself, you can see that the properties has your generic information on it, your name, your block name. If I hover over it, it gives you the pay item data. And if I had open Entity Manager, it would give you even more information with that little truck symbol, which means it's loaded with X data. But to use the Light Pole Manager, because you notice you didn't see all that extended data, so I'm going to select one light pole, right click, select similar, and I'm going to go to the extended data tab on the properties, and we have what we call property sets. So I'm going to add property sets. You have one for light pole data and load center. So I'm going to unselect load center, select OK. Now, if you look at the properties, it has all that data that you saw in ORD. And it works the same way. So if I select light pole manager, it's a little bit faster. And read number. And do my updates here. So if you notice here, the default, it's not, everything's not selected. So you have to either select all or make your individual selections. Poof, there it is. And the label's dynamic also on this. And actually, let me open this. Process, save. Okay, so this is good. This happened. This happens in ORD too. So you saw that the information didn't stick because I forgot to hit process save light poles, right? So, and I didn't select my row. See, it's good that you're watching this. A1, hit it again. Process save light poles. And I can create a light pole report. I'm going to save it here just to show you. Comes in with the same data, except in Civil 3D is northing easting station, offset, all your data. And from here, you would use the table. It's on the FDOT ribbon, which would bring that linked Excel spreadsheet in. So I believe that's all for this. See how smooth that went with no hiccups. It's pretty straightforward and simple to use. And let me switch back to ORD here. So Matt, that's all I have to show for the light pole manager for both platforms. Unless there are questions or additional demonstrations.
That was certainly quick and efficient. You did an excellent job presenting that there, Randy. Yes, let's look at the Q&A dialogue. If you want to open up that dialogue on your screen, we can talk about some of the questions that have yet to be answered. Looks like some of these might be questions that you have answered during the presentation, but you might be able to go back over them and see if there's anything additional that you want to elaborate on.
Okay. Any way to expand the box? There it is.
Yes, drag that bottom right corner.
Yeah, Matt, while Randy's looking at it, there was a number of questions about what shows up in the label. Anybody can create a text favorite and use that for their source for their text in their label.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Actually, hang on. There we go. So one of the questions, new FDM requires coordinates instead of northing and easting. Mike Robertson, I think.
For the labels?
Not the labels, for the data itself. I think that has been worked out to northing easting, correct?
Can you zoom in on your table? I know it's calculated, so it's.
Yeah, it's northing easting in both platforms.
I'm not seeing the question. That's why my thing disappeared. There we go. I'll follow up the question. I'm not seeing it though.
The new FDM requires coordinates instead of northing easting. Can pole manager be revised to reflect that? I think we initially did coordinates, but then
you mean lat long? Because coordinates are northing easting. That's the
yeah,
X to Y.
I'm assuming the lat long. Remember it initially did that and we went to the coordinates, but we can look into that.
Yeah, I'm already mining that data, so if that's what needs to be in there, we can put it in there.
Is there an update plan to enable multiple pay items or item types to be added to a single lighting cell? Yes, there is. A lot of the new features, let's say the developer created place cell group and FDOT signs initially, then the signal tool was a brand new application they wrote. So the signal tool allowed you to add multiple pay item numbers to an object, and so now that is getting back put into the other applications too. So the goal is to have all the applications that do the same thing, where you can add multiple pay item numbers. You can, which are different item types, and it'll be in what's called a pay item array that you can expand in properties, and it just gives you a list of your pay item numbers and descriptions. It's not on the surface of the properties. You have to dig down. There's a little expanding window arrow that'll let you do that. Here's something, Mike, can you sort by a column.
You have to try it. I don't remember if I implemented that or not.
I don't know. Let's see.
If not, I can put it in my notes to do that. Just remember the whatever order the grid on the top is the way it's going to come out in the report.
So what's going on here? Uh-oh.
Now you broke it.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that.
I'll put it on my notes.
Yes, so we definitely need the offsets due to utility conflicts. They want us to include that there. So that's in the label. We did have some discussions, you and I, about that. So you'd add in the offset, whether it be negative or a positive number with LT or RT.
Right.
So that's on the list. Okay, how do we insert station in that label cluster? That'll be addressed with the light pole labeler. Currently, the station part of that text favorite does not update. So that's why we're writing our own application, so it will read from the light pole manager data itself. I assume labeling will work with a selection set. Is that something? What's a light pole labeler too? Correct, Mike?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question on that one.
So let's say in the light pole manager, you can highlight.
Oh, yeah, and you just
then
want to label those?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that'll be handled in that new application.
Yeah, like I said, a few of these questions get back to my original thing where there's currently, if you want to label it, and there's nothing in our built-in text favorite for one of those properties, you can create your own text favorite to use that can point to any of the item type properties on those blocks.
Okay, cool. Can the symbol for the light pole be changed? Was that a selection when placing the poles? For instance, if you wanted a filled circle for a proposed light pole versus an open circle. Short answer is yes, you can. Because you can go through, a way to do that is to go through place cell group and use that custom cell like I showed. Make sure you have your correct pay item and description in it, and you can place it. Which is also a good question because within the lighting cell that you currently have, there are additional light pole cells that have been created to accommodate, for instance, when you have your lighting legend, when you have your different uses and scenarios, try to cover that, but you'll have to use that custom place cell to get those placed. Signal design needs the resizing feature as well. We can add that on, let the developer know. Can you assign specific number of conductors and conductor sizes to individual conduit runs? I'm imagining that's the label tool, label function in the draw conduit that's coming. So you can have, it'll show your number of conductors and number of runs along with the length, whatever's in the basis of estimates. I know that's spelled out what's required in the plan. So we're going to match that with that labeler. Is the place label tool more performant than LDM? I'll let somebody that has worked with LDM answer that question.
I'm not sure what how LDM and placing labels are connected in any way.
Oh, okay. Sorry. correction, is the table tool better than using LDM? Because I didn't show it using LDM.
Oh, okay. Well, I can tell you our general thought is to start using the built-in MicroStation table functionality and slowly try to get away from LDM. It's just another application, because that was written originally when there was no table functionality in MicroStation. And since now that includes that functionality, as long as we can do everything with the built-in tools, we'll start sunsetting some tools that there's really no reason for us to support anymore. The
Right.
vendor that originally wrote that application is not around anymore. So we keep it running, but we're not doing much with it besides
Right.
keeping it running.
So, like I showed, I recommend using the table option. It's easier. It's faster. I mean, you saw all that I did there. Yes, this will be recorded and posted on our scheduled webinars page. If you notice, you go to that page, you can register for future webinars, and there's also a link to the right of that will allow you to open up the video of this presentation. And if you want support, that was another question, you can reach out to the CAD office or just email me direct. Okay, here's a good question. Will the table automatically update when changes are made in the design file?
No.
That I don't know.
No.
No, okay. Okay.
Well, I take that back. So you can keep your MicroStation table linked to the Excel file, just like LDM does. I haven't tested this, but it should, if you go in and make your changes, commit them back to that same Excel file, it should theoretically update. I haven't tried that yet. I know manually editing that Excel file by hand will update the table in MicroStation. Whether it gets basically deleted and overwritten if it maintains that linkage, I have not tested that. I have a feeling it will be okay, but I'm not sure. I have to try that.
Okay.
So the basic functionality of a MicroStation table is when you create it and you link it to an Excel file. As you update your Excel file, the table in MicroStation will update the next time you open it. So what we'll have to test is if I overwrite that same file, if it'll still maintain that linkage, which I'm assuming
Okay.
is just a file name, but we'll have to test it.
Okay.
It should be true for both platforms with their table objects.
Right. I noticed one little change in this Civil 3D function with ORD. You know how this is grayed out.
Yep. I haven't done it in Civil 3D.
Yeah. It's like I was explaining, this is where changes go. Stuff gets added in one, then it goes back to the other, and vice versa. So how do you create a text favorite? I believe there is training on that. Just include that in what link, which training manual contains that information that they can go to.
Candy, is that something you would know?
What was the question again?
How do you
which
create
training manual has? Go ahead, Randy.
How do you create a text favorite? Which training manual covers that?
That would be in the plans production. That's a Chris Thorpe question. He's got all that detailed. take a quick look at the CAD training page. That is the plan development workflows training would cover, I believe, cover creating text favorites. If not, there may also, I'm pretty sure there are also a few posted webinars that cover that topic that were done by Chris.
We touched on it a little bit, but Bentley's got some in-depth videos on it as well.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's yeah, if you're familiar making label styles in Civil 3D, it's somewhat similar. It'll look familiar. And yes, lat long, Mike. So we'll have to, like I said, we'll get with
Okay.
internal people
Yeah.
and see.
I'm already storing it and calculating it. We're just not showing it on the table. So it's just a matter of letting me know what needs to go where and we can switch it. I've already got that
Yeah.
data.
Okay. Is the arm rise automated based on the arm length as shown in sheet 3 of 9 of the standards? I think I've gotten an email on this recently with well, it was with mast arms. I have to do some research on that and get back to that question.
It's not automated now, but if there's a standard way for us to do it, I can.
Yeah,
Just have to do some research into it.
yeah. Somebody was asking automated on mast arm assemblies also. How would you handle dual arm light pole entry and display to show different arm lengths and different wattages? Well, that's new. So you'd have one light pole with 2 different arm lengths and 2 different wattages.
Only way I could think you could do it right now is you'd have to stack 2 on top, one on top of the other one with the different entries.
Yeah, that would be a change to the how the data displays. I guess you could do that. Is there a way to place light poles without an alignment? No, because you want the alignment for quantities if you want to run a quantity report on that. I don't know the instance that you'd want to place a light pole without an alignment. Okay, some of the questions are duplicated. I think I've answered everything, but if, oh, here's another one. Can the units be added, the column headers for the pole data table, i.e. arm length, foot?
It's got the tick on the unit that's actually reported, but
Oh, okay, because we have jobs without an alignment push button projects. I know we've handled this with the sign tool where you can place a non-alignment signpost because just like you described, some projects don't have an alignment. We'll have to look into that, maybe to include that option. So what that option is, when you go to select an alignment, there's a blank spot above the alignment names that'll allow you to do that. So I'll put that on developers list. Okay. I guess that's all.
All right, that's fantastic. So just want to thank everyone once again for attending the webinar. And if you want to see the recording of it, that should be posted hopefully by the end of the week, along with the Q&A document on our website under the posted webinars section. I believe it's also being posted under the same section where you registered for the webinar as well. So, all right, thanks again.